Welcome back to the Ropes Family Podcast. We're on episode 53, and last week we ended off the episode saying this is kind of the direction we want to go. So this week we're actually going to be going through for the next couple weeks Deuteronomy 6, 4 through 9. I'll read it real quick just to give us a refresher. It says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. These commandments I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road and when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on your door frames, on your houses, and on your gates." So we're going to kind of break this up. And sorry, I'm here with Courtney, by the way. I forget to say.
It's okay. I exist too. Here I am. Hi.
I forget every time to say
okay.
We're here with Courtney. But we're going to be walking through this passage for the next couple weeks. I don't know how many weeks we're going to spend on this, but this first week we're going to be covering that verse 5. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. So Courtney, you came up with these definitions for these things. So can you define? So with the premise of loving the Lord your God with all, can you define heart, soul, mind, and strength? And also, in the New Testament, Jesus adds mind. We find that in Mark, I think 15 or something. One of the passages in Mark, Jesus adds to this passage mind and strength. So can you define each one of those for us?
Yes. So I got these from a book called Loving God with All Your Heart. And the author said that heart applies to our desires, actions, and choices. Soul, our emotions and will. Mind, all of our thoughts and reasoning. Strength, all of our energy and dedicating our resources.
I like that. And do you remember the author's name?
I don't.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, but the book was called
Loving God with All Your Heart.
Loving God with All Your Heart. I haven't read it, but can you give us a quick synopsis of the book? Was it just kind of talking about this passage, or what was the premise of it?
It was just dedicating our lives to God.
Okay.
In every aspect. So pretty much this packet.
So I think that heart, soul, mind, and strength kind of is what was the word you used? With everything. All that we have is our heart, our soul, our mind, and our strength. And that's what is commanded of us, is to love the Lord our God with all that we are. So I think what we can do here on this podcast, on this episode, is kind of I can give you like a couple of the biblical things, and maybe you could give us some practical things or what you've done to love the Lord your God with all the fill in the blank. Okay. So how do we love the Lord our God with all of our heart? This is this pertains to our D Now weekend. The verse that I used, it's in John 14, verse 15. It says, "If you love me, you will keep my commands." So that's how we start to love the Lord our God with all our heart. Is to, if you love me, keep my commands. And something that we've talked about in downstairs in the basement is what are those commandments? What does Jesus command us to do? And it says in the very next chapter in John 15, verse 12, it says, "This is my command." This is Jesus talking. "Love one another as I have loved you." Yeah. Because no one has greater love than this, to lay down his life for his friends. Yeah. So, it's pretty simple. Jesus says, if you love me, keep my commands. And this is my command. He doesn't just say, if you love me, keep my commands.
Figure it out.
We also have the Bible,
right,
to figure out what all his commands are. But they all boil down to love God and love people. And so do you have some practical things that we can love the Lord our God with?
Yes. So I took her desires, actions, and choices, being what the heart is. And then we have to have those holy in God, or, we can't function in our lives, basically.
We can't love the Lord our God.
Right. We can't.
If we're not doing it.
We can't
fully,
do it.
Right?
Yeah. But in my mind, everything, I have to say things practical because I get all overwhelmed and stuff. So some of the practical things I thought about was like our desires. What our desires actually are. What are our hopes and dreams? Are they based on the kingdom and furthering God's word, or are they selfish? And that I had to take a long look at myself there, because I'm always talking about, what's to come, what are we going to do? What are our goals? And if they're not based in, God's word, they're useless.
Yeah. That's a tough thing, like we love doing some of the things that we do, but if we need to work out ways that we do the things that we love, the things that we desire, to do those in honoring God,
right,
and loving him in the way that we're called to. That's a good point.
And then our choices, of course, where am I getting my decision making from? Am I letting the world tell me what I should be making decisions, how I should be making decisions? Or
that's a big thing.
Am I letting the Bible guide me?
Yeah.
And
I think that creeps in a lot, because in our culture, like we are like inundated. Is that the right word? Inundated with, it comes at us from all directions with opinions of people that sound like they know what they're doing because they're on the right podcast or on the right social media platform or on the news. They all sound like they know what they're talking about. But if it's not based in or rooted in the word, then it's not going to hold up. It may work for the season, but it's not going to hold up in the long run. And that's the important thing when we're trying to love the Lord our God, is make sure we're doing it in a way that's based biblically, not in a way that's kind of can be tossed to and fro.
And then our actions. Obviously, if we're not showing God through our actions, then we're not where we're supposed to be. We're not loving God with our whole heart if our actions are not showing him to others. I don't know where that went in here. It's gone, but that's okay.
Sorry, I may have deleted it.
No, it's okay. But with that, if we're saying one thing and we're acting a completely different way, which I'm not saying I haven't done, but we're not loving God with our whole heart. We're not giving fully to him.
And it takes practice to do this stuff. Like, it's not like we can just say,
no.
Okay, in everything I'm doing right now, I'm loving the Lord. A lot of the things, it kind of takes, and we'll talk about that in mind and strength. It takes a mindset to switch and to do the things. All right, so the next one is soul. So how do we love the Lord with all of our soul? And we've got to first figure out what our soul is. Bless the Lord, oh my soul. We're gonna sing that song on Sunday. 10,000 Reasons. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. We're gonna sing that on Sunday. And so, what is our soul? Our soul, I think, is the deepest part of our being. It is how we're formed. We're knitted together in our mother's womb. We're put together, and that includes our soul. It includes about who we are. Like the deepest parts of our identity. And loving God with all of our soul is loving God with our whole identity, with who we are. Make sense?
And then I went off of that, and Romans 12:2, it says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and improve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will." Because we have to fully align our emotions and our will with God's will. And like you said earlier, we're inundated with all of this stuff, social media, the news, just TV shows, radio, whatever. And people are telling us how to feel, how to respond, how to, behave. But what does the Bible say? In the same verse, basically it is the same verse, but then love God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself, which is kind of the same thing you said earlier.
Yeah, that's the
that's all we have to do.
Yep. It's all rooted in that. Yeah.
It's all that.
It's the law summed up in these. And renewing our mind, that's a challenge.
Yeah.
Like renewing the things that are that have kind of entered our mind of the world and of the flesh. Those things are our mind is sometimes or not more than sometimes, I guess, is selfish. It's kind of self-preservation. How can I get mine? How can I get what I want? It's about me. Our mind is about us. But in verse in Romans, Paul is telling us to renew our mind, to change our mind, to switch it on to things above, to things on that the Spirit wants, to the things that God calls us to do, which is hard because it's what God wants,
Right.
But it's so much better, and it's hard to it's hard to do. I think we talked about that last week in youth is, dying to ourselves, taking up our cross, being born again. All of those things require a change of mindset. You have to do. It's purposeful. It doesn't just happen naturally, and I think that's the point that Paul is saying is you've got to renew your mind because it's not going to happen naturally. It takes work. It takes practice.
It's not fun.
No, I mean it can be.
It can be, but it's not always.
Yeah, it takes work. Like guitar playing is fun, but it took work to learn how to do it.
Right.
I'm not the analogy's not perfect there, but
I get what you're saying.
Faith. It takes work, but there's a benefit in having a faith in Jesus. Is because where your faith is.
Yeah.
And it takes practice, it takes work, just like renewing our mind. And then with all of our mind, does that kind of go in with soul? I kind of put those two together. So what do you have about mind?
She said our thoughts and reasoning must be in accordance with Jesus, which is the same thing as our actions. If we're thinking, whatever we're thinking has to be on course with the Bible. Yeah. I mean, you've said it 10 times. We have to renew our minds. We have to die to ourselves and live in Him. And
I think my mind tries to play tricks on me all the time.
Yeah,
and that's a big point. A part of renewing our mind is my mind tells me constantly that I am not good enough.
Yeah,
and
ours all do. Or mine does.
Yeah. My mind constantly tries to manipulate the way the world is, manipulate the things, and make them either as an attack or make me seem like I'm better than I am sometimes. Sometimes I'm the worst and sometimes I'm the best. My mind is full of playing tricks on me, and the heart is the same way. We've got to surrender both of those things to God because He's the only thing that can take those things and form them into the things that they need to be, because the flesh is tainted. The mind is a scary place sometimes, and it needs to be. God is the only way that can handle it, and it takes placing your faith in that and trusting God in that. But it also takes like work and renewing our mind and focusing on the things above.
Well, and I catch myself really focusing, like when we're preparing for podcasts or I'm preparing to teach at church or whatever. And then I get off of that and I start doing just like the mundane tasks or whatever. And I get overwhelmed and I let the world come in and I stop focusing on Jesus. And I'm bad about it because I'll have, a horrible day and I'm like, did I do anything? Did I talk to Jesus? Did I do anything today other than freak out about something that's not important?
Yeah.
Which I'm good at.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of spiritual formation. Did we practice anything that's going to build our faith up? Did we practice anything that's going to pull our faith apart, a little bit, or stretch us or pull us away from the things that are important? Yeah. I think we can easily get swept up in the mundane and the little tasks or the worldly things that can distract us, like paying mortgages or electricity bills or
even just the news and just watching the world fall apart around us. I mean, I get overwhelmed. I'm like, why? Why do we live in this world?
Of course the world is going to fall apart because it doesn't have Jesus, right?
Exactly.
And that's why Jesus came. But it's still like, it's scary. We still got to pay taxes. We still got to do things. We still got to live in the world. But I think the comfort that we can find as believers is that Jesus is at the end of it all. He's conquered it all, and Jesus is King. And so all of these things that we're going to endure are just going to they don't really necessarily matter in the grand scheme of things, in the grand scheme of the kingdom of heaven. And then loving the Lord God with all of our strength. And I used Colossians 3:17, which is after my favorite verse, Colossians 3:16. But I'll just read 17. It says, "And whatever you do in word or deed, do everything in the name of the Lord, giving thanks to God the Father through him. Let the word of Christ dwell within you richly," is 3:16. And then 3:17 is, "And whatever you do in word or deed in the name of the Lord." So with everything that we do, from podcasting to being a dad or to being a mom, to being whatever you do it in the name of the Lord. Give God the glory, give God the honor with everything that you do. And I think that's how we love the Lord with all of our strength.
I agree with that. And in that book, she said, our energy and our resources must be fully in Jesus. And so I took it as, where am I putting my energy? Focus. Where am I putting all of that? And is it always rooted in Jesus? Probably not. And so, like I said earlier, I get to the end of the day sometime and I'm like so overwhelmed. I get overwhelmed very easily, obviously. And I'll get to the end of the day and my kids like get home from school and I know I should be happy they're there, but I just am like, oh my gosh, stop talking to me. And I get so uptight and like freaked out. And then I stand there and I'm like, what did I do today? And I watched TV or I, played games on my phone, which I like to do. I scrolled. I did not give myself to Jesus. I did not do my Bible study. I always start my day with a prayer, but maybe I didn't continue praying throughout the day. Maybe I didn't, look for God in anything. I just did what I had to do with some extra little scrolling and stuff. And I really feel like I have a much better day when I give my energy all to Jesus. And
I think you made a good point. Is our phones, they like to suck the serotonin out of our brains.
Yes.
Right. And there's sometimes where like I'll be at home making dinner for the kids and like I'm like looking for something to give me that little boost in my brain and I can't find it. And the reason I can't find it is because I used it already. I already spent it doing the doom scroll.
Right.
The scroll troll. I was a scroll troll. I just came up with that.
Way to go.
I was a scroll troll or whatever and just scrolled all day long under a bridge and, didn't do anything that was productive or definitely did not love God with all of my strength.
Yeah.
Right? I just kind of existed, and just did the things that are just, it just sucks the life out of you, right? We've all I think all of us as parents just kind of do that, and we just keep our heads down and like, I didn't yell at the kids today, so it was okay, or whatever,
Yeah.
That's something I think all parents kind of struggle with is trying to stay present and it may not just be because we looked at our phones. It may be because work is stressful or there's a lot of things going on.
Focus on something else.
We're exhausted. We've got a lot of things happening, and I agree with that for sure.
Okay, so what's the family challenge? It's a good one.
The family challenge. So in each area, in heart, soul, mind, strength, love God more.
That was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
I think you laid out some good, practical things that we can work on to love God more. And I think that we all, as believers, there's somewhere that we're lacking, and it's not all the same every day. Someday we might be great at loving the Lord with all of our heart, but not all of our strength.
Right.
Or all of our soul, but not all of our mind. I think that it's a constant just staying present in it. And so that's your family challenge. And in each one, try and do that each day. Renew your mind each day. Set your focus on Him and do everything that you do in the name of the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and that's all we got this week. We will talk at y'all later. Next week is Disciple Now Weekend. So I'm sure I will be on that episode a little bit more stressed out than I am on this episode. I'm already feeling the stresses of Disciple Now next weekend.
It's going to be wonderful.
It's going to be good. And that's the thing is I stress out so bad about it. leading up into, and then when we get there and then it's over, I'm like, man, God is so good, and He works in the lives of these kids, and it's really a worthwhile weekend. But it's one of those things, just planning all those things and making sure they all come together. But we will talk at y'all later. Peace.